I love that we are 16 minutes into recording between two not Star Wars guys, and all we've been talking about is Star Wars.
You once described to a mutual screenwriting professor that I was the Darth Vader to your Luke Skywalker.
Did I?
Maybe you said I was the Luke Skywalker to your Darth Vader. I'm not sure. Either way.
I think that checks out way more. Hello, and welcome to Expected Own Goals. May the 6th be with you. I am your host, Eric Morgan.
I'm Evan Davis. Yeah, Star Wars night in a lot of stadiums across the weekend.
Yeah.
Since whatever that holiday is that happened on Sunday, quote unquote. But I think the big story is that a lot of Jedi fell.
This was a dark weekend for the luminaries in the league, and I don't think we need to sit on a side of the fence on this one. But you posted from our account that we sort of expected this mushy middle to go from 5th to 12th, 13th. Like that we saw coming. What we didn't see coming was all the sort of top four getting dragged into this fray. And I'm not sure whether that is just the current state of things, with most teams having played 7 or 8 games, every team having played 7 or 8 games, or whether we are in for more of this happening over the course of the season. Because the numbers aren't sticky just yet, but when we look at them, there's some interesting stuff happening.
Interesting stuff, but also, as we'll hit in the run in the whip around, Gotham probably was better than a 0-0 draw. Kansas City was probably better than a 1-0 loss. So it's not as though the scales have been completely tipped. And our featured game of the week, I don't think Orlando was worthy of a 1-0 loss either. So I think this might be a little bit more sample size flukiness than it is a trend, but it is something worth noticing. That what I think we probably can say is that there are teams who may be better than we had anticipated, and we've talked about that in ways, shapes, and forms. But there is a clear group, I think, that is beginning to emerge that might actually be solidly better than we thought they would be.
That I agree with. And in future weeks, we'll definitely dig more into that, but I think we'll probably mention them as we go. We won't be doing a Your Team Sucks edition this week because we don't actually think any of these teams truly suck, except maybe one or two, and I think their fan bases probably wouldn't disagree with us in that way. But also, these are elite professionals. And the amount it takes to just get into the NWSL is extraordinary. So with that, let us start with one of the teams we probably don't view so favorably, getting a surprise result after sacking Lorne Donaldson. Evan, first, is this new manager bounce? Or what is going on with Chicago and Gotham 0-0?
To hear Matt Peterson tell it, or to hear Matt Peterson's producer telling him it is a new manager bounce. They were really trying to force that narrative onto the game. Yeah. And it is really hard to do that when it ends 0-0 and Chicago offers you absolutely nothing going forward. No, it's not a new manager bounce. Chicago's still terrible. I don't know what to say. They did a very good job containing Gotham. And there was a little bit of a tactical shakeup. Yeah, with Masaki Hemi coming in, there was, whether it was players wanting to impress the manager or Hemi kind of deciding that a new tactical approach was necessary, or it was Richard Foyt's in his ear saying, you're an interim, we want to play a certain way, you fill in the gaps. They pressed Gotham, and they pressed Gotham quite well in stages, to the point where Gotham, even though we're probably the better team on the day, they didn't get that much offense out of it, especially after minute 30.
Yeah, this to me feels first, Lorne Donaldson, Patsy. I think I posted from our account just this is fall guy, epitaph for a fall guy. This team came out and delivered what I associate with a Chicago Stars performance, which is losing the non-penalty XG battle 1-0.4. That is just, more than a half goal separation in XG defeat. But to Chicago's credit, limiting Gotham to 1 XG and the way that they did it was impressive. And it was only at the cost of really any great scoring chances for themselves. But not the craziest way to try to go get a result on the road against a good team. So, I mean, is Chicago fortunate to have not conceded? Maybe. But also, like, teams put up 1xG a lot of the times and don't score. This is a good result for them, but not one I don't think they could have gotten with Lorne Donaldson.
Yeah, I don't know if Donaldson would have had them being more front foot defensively. I think he probably would have said, top 4 team on the road, I'm going to just low block it the way we always do and try and hit on the counter. I think what makes, I mean, it's risk reward. Like, I think there's a world where Gotham figured out a way to break that pressure, and all of a sudden Chicago would have been really, really exposed. But they never really were able to do that consistently. And what it got Chicago, or think what Chicago was hoping it would get them, was just to get Ludmila and Jamise Joseph a little bit closer to goal when they got on the ball. But aside from Ludmila, no one was really getting in the attacking half all that often when they were in possession, rare as the moments were when they were. So, yeah, Chicago is just still at a talent disadvantage. You mentioned the Lorne Donaldson firing. Like, Richard Foyt's delivered one of the most extraordinary press conferences I think I've ever heard. Not because he necessarily was saying anything outlandish, but he talked for a very, very long time and focused really intently on sort of the particulars of on-field performance. And what emerges from his comments is that he truly believes that the players that Chicago currently has should be able to play a high-quality possession game and control matches and create a lot of good chances in the final third. And he believed that Lorne Donaldson had set them up to play the way that we saw last year, which was defend in your own box really compactly and then go long and try and hit one of your attackers for a scoring opportunity. He believes that the players are better than those tactics should imply. And so that's why he let Donaldson go. I don't know what data he's looking at to make him believe that. I don't understand what would make him possibly think that they had an off season to get them into a position where they could play the way that he's talking about. Unless you really see something in like players that aren't getting a lot of minutes that he thinks should, or players who are maybe playing out of position, who should be playing in a different part of the field. But I don't know, man. I don't see any universe where this team could possibly expect to contend for a playoff spot and also play possession football. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I don't think they have the personnel right now. Foyt's is doing like, it feels to me like some pretty classic CYA cover your ass shit.
Yeah, because how interesting it is that the narrative he's painting is that like, oh, we have the right players, and who was responsible for getting the players? Him. You know?
Unfortunately, coaches...
Much easier to fire.
Or maybe correctly, coaches much easier to replace just given the impact they have on their team. Yeah. But I think that in this particular instance, Lorne Donaldson is forced to answer for the sins that he alone did not create. Like that he is a small part of a larger apparatus and is being served up to the gods as sacrifice for that kind of, for the performances.
Yeah, and it wasn't, Donaldson wasn't Foyt's hire. So even though Foyt was diplomatic and said how much he loved and respected Lorne as a guy, and that they actually collaborated well and learned how to manage each other's disagreements, at the end of the day, he wasn't Foyt's dude. And so that's just a thing that often happens when regimes turn over at misaligned times. Like, GM probably just wants to hire his own head coach. And whether this is true or not, there was certainly interesting timing with Mallory Swanson's extension and Lord Donaldson's hire, and they have a history together. So, who was driving the Donaldson hire is an interesting question. So now Foyt gets to handpick his successor, and let's see if they really do have the talent to play possession football.
Yeah, that's right. On the Gotham side of this game, this is sort of like when Gotham are bad Gotham, which is relatively controlled, really struggling to create good shooting opportunities out of a heap load of possession at times. And so this is nothing new. This is just, for me, this is the flip side of some of these high scoring performances we've seen from them of late should be interpreted as like aberrations as opposed to like a sea change that has occurred with Gotham. This is just like a less effective Gotham doing pretty traditional Gotham shit. And, it's just not working out in this instance.
Yeah, I mean,
they played a good enough game to get a win. They did.
Yeah, I mean, and they decided that to put Ellis Stevens out on the wing, which is maybe not the most optimal place to play her, but how do you get Sarah Shapansky and Esther on the field at the same time? He's moving some pieces around, and we're still waiting. And that job isn't going to get easier when Midge Purse is match fit for 90 minutes. So yeah, but Jace had a bad game. Sarah Shapansky, I didn't think had the best game either. It was just a game where your attackers just couldn't find themselves in good spots to get the ball in the attacking third. This, yes, and as you said, pretty classic Gotham on a bad day performance.
Yeah, and again, Gotham on a bad day is not that bad a team. It's like in a league where 8 teams make the playoffs, Gotham on a bad day is totally fine. Yeah. In a league where we really prized the Shield and treated it like it was the huge deal, where you were accumulating results over the course of a season, this would be a much worse result. But for Gotham's overall trajectory, get yourself a home playoff game or two. This is fine, and not worth flagging. Let's talk about a team that probably is worth flagging. The mighty, mighty North Carolina, and we do probably owe some respect to Nahas in a minute, but the mighty, mighty North Carolina waltz their way into the less than mighty Utah and get a pretty convincing, or was it 2-0 victory?
I mean, it was convincing. I don't know if it really says that they're now a really good team again, because you beat Utah, so what? Sorry. And in aggregate, they're still sitting 12th on non-penalty XG differential per game. And Nahas felt it necessary to bench Jaden Shaw.
The Jaden Shaw Nahas thing is odd.
Did you catch something that he said on a podcast about how she needed to start settling into the way that the team trains?
I mean,
he was trying to say it positive. It's oh yeah, new player. Sometimes we have a certain way of doing things. It just takes time to get up on the book. But that made me feel a little nervous, especially when the result of that we saw her benched.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. If you're getting 2-0 victories on the road without Jaden Shaw in the lineup, I think that probably empowers a manager to bench one of your better players for a longer period of time without a lot of blowback. Mm-hmm. But for Shaw, this move is it's early days, but this move just does not appear to be working out.
We strongly suspected it wouldn't.
Yeah,
but there's also we also want to give Nahas a little bit of credit in that, one of the things he said in his post-match presser a week ago after they won at the death was that they had switched to a 3-4-2-1, and he said it was because his assistants were trying to convince him to do it, and he had just been too bullheaded to do it until then. And that was, I thought, a really elegant, we agreed it was a really elegant solution to get Sanchez and Shaw on the field at the same time in areas of the field where they'll both be maximally effective. And the 3-4-2-1 returned. It was a little bit more of a proper 3-4-3 in possession, I think, because who was really holding? There weren't 2 players holding at any one time, because Sanchez was pulling out wide a lot. But so fine, but what made the 3-4-2-1 so seductive was to get Sanchez and Shaw on the field at the same time. So when you don't do that, I don't really know what its purpose is. What do you think?
Yeah. What I think is really working is Sanchez and Ryan Williams in interplay and stacked. We've seen Ryan Williams now for 2 weeks in a row really getting forward.
Yeah.
And that is unlocking a bunch of stuff. It isn't exactly how we thought the 3-4-2-1 was going to work for them, but it is creating a channel for Ryan Williams to run in centrally, and she is filling that, and very small sample, and not against particularly, against Kansas City, strong team, but not against Utah, a particularly strong team. But it is working. It is creating a rub that other teams clearly haven't prepped for. I wonder if that is a quick fix that will be solved, or whether it's a tinker that will be shuffled to the side in favor of other decisions as they go through this transitional period, or whether it's here to stay. But if it's here to stay, the Ryan Williams is doing interesting, really good, progressive attacking work. And that is opening stuff up for Ashley Sanchez, who herself looks more like herself.
And Shinomi Koyama as an attacker was an interesting wrinkle too.
Agreed. I think this lineup would have had really diminishing returns against better teams on the road. But against Utah, and we can switch to Utah here, North Carolina came out with a game plan that was effective and able to sort of get an early lead and hold that early lead against a not very good team. Utah, Jimmy Kunrates is putting up Amy Rodriguez level numbers this year.
Yeah.
I think they have the same point total through the same number of games. And this feels really different because this team was not built in Jimmy Kunrats's, with his vision in mind. But the results aren't that different from A-Rod stuff. The Utah Royals have yet to post above a 1.0 non-penalty XG over a game, and that is really bad.
Especially when you play in possession, essentially, what was like a 4-2-4, where you're getting a lot of bodies forward, which is, of course, what fucks you the other way when you're playing that high up with that many numbers committed to try and create and score. But the fact that you can't do that with that many attacking elements means that players are out of joint and not solving. They're not interpreting space in the way that they need to. I mean, God, you look at Cece Kaiser, Brecca Mazingo, Ali Sentner, KK Ream, like nobody produced positive value either from a passing or receiving perspective. That's really, really concerning.
Yeah, Cece Kaiser, 12 touches in 45 minutes, subbed at the half. That's really alarming. I mean, I think you call it a 4-2-4. It was kind of a 4-6-0 because with no strikers, there was no sort of like organizing third line. There were players forward, but a lot of it ended up being like, young debutante Ream chasing long balls. Right. Look, the injuries are bad. They are in Utah, but the performances are really bad, alarmingly so.
Yeah, and what are the ideas to kind of cover for those injuries? They seem awfully haphazard. And it's fine. Sometimes you need to experiment to figure out what will be the best unit while you wait for your best players to get healthy. But, man, the clock is burning, dude. Like there are fewer and fewer games by the week for you to be able to make up ground.
Yeah, the Utah Royals just like continue to not be able to produce high quality chances ever. They continue to not be able to get touches in the box, and all of the tinkering seems to not solve the fundamental problem of we need to create more in attack while not giving up more in defense, and they're just flailing.
And they gave up the most in defense, the Del Fava own goal.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like there aren't good players in Utah, but right now this team just looks really adrift, and it's surprising.
You want to talk a little chaos ball?
Let's go to Chaos Ball because we don't need to belabor Utah's troubles. Angel City 4. Washington Spirit at home 3. Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. That game was so fun. Just madness, though. Riley Tiernan, is she your Rookie of the Year?
What? No. Why would you say that?
Yeah. No, because like I think a lot of people are starting to be like, just all the goals that she's scoring. Right. She's like your rookie of the year, and she gets a big winner. She has been better than I thought she would be.
She is still hovering below average both on XG and XA per 96, despite the goals. Her possession value is pretty strong. That actually puts her number one among rookies at the moment.
I wasn't asking that question as a joke. I think that there's an argument to be made.
Yeah, it's just it's taken a while to emerge. Oh, and I lied. Actually, Lily Real is still number one among rookies on possession value. But
that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that her energy is a real net positive. It just needs to start being channeled. You know, like she moves. She's got a lot of free movement in her for a number 9, but it doesn't always mean that she ends up in good spots. But against Washington, because Washington was kind of giving them, Washington sort of allowing Angel City to stretch them, Tiernan was able to get onto balls in better spots than she had been before. And so that goal was maybe a little bit of good fortune. I actually don't remember what the XG value on it was, but
on the winner,
yeah,
it's like 0.3ish.
Okay, that's strong. Like,
yeah, but it's also just chaos in the box.
Yeah.
But her opening goal was also from a really good position. Yeah. So she had a strong game in terms of just like getting herself in good places.
I guess what I'm saying is like that was all very encouraging, but raw goal total aside, let's see if she can just make that a consistent proposition, because this was a weird game. You know, like Washington really, really allowed themselves to be opened up. And that's injury driven too. I mean, you're really starting to feel the absence of Kruger and Hirschfeld, you know, and their general sort of defensive structure felt really, really unbalanced. Their attack was their attack, but that's because Angel City's defense is Angel City's defense. And Angel City never met a lead they didn't want to piss away.
Angel City going in and playing these high variance games, just like opening up huge opportunity. And previously they were downed by that because they played a higher variance game against a better team and got beat. In this particular game, they benefited from this sort of scattered approach, and they finished some chances. Again, I think their non-penalty XG here is really good, but also, you know, it reflects a game that just as easily could have finished 3-3 or 2-2. And they got the benefit. They got, 4 goals on 2.7 XG. So that is some things breaking their way. The Sister Act goal was like one of the more delightful things. One of the more delightful goals I think I've watched in a long time. Not only is it great build-up, but Giselle Thompson is just like on her horse and makes a perfect cut inside. And that finish with the outside of the boot is really challenging. And I really just like savored the joy of the two of them almost being surprised by what had just gone down.
Washington gave her the lane. Like that is supposed to be Casey Kruger's marker. And was Esme Morgan like Esme Morgan left wing back is not going to have the same level of like 1v1 discipline. And so off the ball, Giselle Thompson just had a clear path to haul ass and cut inside to receive that pass.
Yeah, and again, it was great, but I think that this is a result where, Angel City gets a 2-0 lead, they blow that 2-0 lead before half. And then they just both of these teams sort of agreed to play this really open style, which should in aggregate benefit Washington, and on the night did not.
Yeah.
And, am I concerned for Washington? They're stretched really thin at this point. And as good as Rosamund Kouassi looks, and still needs a goal, but as good as she looks coming back, their attack is getting pieces back. But their defensive unit is still, which has been kind of lifting and holding them for a while, is now the unit that looks like it's carrying a fair amount of strain. So Washington, they're a curious case at this point and are super hard to assess because we've really never seen anything approaching an optimal 11 from them. Last year, Washington could really count on having a 6 in there that was grinding play to a halt and offering support defense and really, or even a double pivot in there. And now, you know, you miss Hal Hirschfeld, you miss Andy Sullivan. But like long term, am I still concerned for Washington? Not really.
There is going to come a point where we're going to run out of road to be able to keep saying that. I know what you mean.
Yeah,
it's just like we need everybody to get healthy, and when's that going to happen? Like,
all right, let's talk the third placed San Diego Wave.
What a statement!
Getting a 2-1 home victory against Bay FC.
I think Andre Carlisle actually put it best. Like he's like, I don't know what to do with a likable Jonas Eidevall team. You know? But this is a group that continues to figure it out.
Yeah,
they had the run of it for the entire game against Bay FC. Like,
yeah, I feel more confident in saying like there's trouble at Bay FC than I do that San Diego's really figured something out. I think Delphine Cascarino rules.
Yeah.
We're starting to see Maria Sanchez used better.
Mm-hmm.
And so San Diego's maybe playing up to a talent level. Again, the deeper Savannah McCaskill has turned out to be a masterstroke.
Yeah. And Kenza Dali too. Kenza Dali has been wonderful. I mean, that's just it's a midfield that we had absolutely no idea what they were going to be like. And it's basically been a hit by every possible measure, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's a great unit of McCaskill, Dali, and Corley.
In this individual game, you know, we've got an early header and a last minute and a last gasp winner. They're both from dead ball situations.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to like minimize that because San Diego did create decent chances throughout the game. They won a penalty, but like they aren't overwhelming anybody yet. This third place feels high for them.
The league table position is a mirage. I mean, but that's only because it's a mirage for anybody who would be sitting there, just given the state of things. They are 5th on non-penalty XG differential per game through 7 games.
Yeah, I mean, like it's better than I thought they were going to be.
Yeah, because of Corley and Cascarino, they are sitting on 5th for receiving G+ per game. Because those 2 players in particular are just menaces off the ball when San Diego's in possession. So there is grist for the mill here. It's not a total illusion. It just might not be quite as good as third place is.
Now let's talk Bay for a minute because Bay looks like stuck in second gear.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it.
There are teams in this league that are really like tinkering and seeing some variance in those results.
Well, this lineup is, I think, the same as it was. Yeah, they're getting some consistency going, but that doesn't necessarily augur, future success.
Yeah, so like a consistent Bay FC team brought not a great performance from last week and into not a great performance this week. I continue to think Rachel Kundananji is excellent, but it really does seem increasingly like she is the source of all creation for them. And like that just probably isn't enough.
You're on the road, but like when you get that pinned back against a team who should nominally be more or less your equal on talent, that shows you that you're getting out coached. You are probably not as good as we thought you were. And yeah, when you only have one attacking outlet that has any type of potency that you're willing to play, because again, now let be hockey on the bench, the mystery continues. It's bad. I think what you said is just apt. They're stuck in second gear and they don't know how to get.
Moving on to Louisville, Houston, the gods just see fit not to allow Louisville or Houston to play at normal start times,
and then they had to abandon the game for a little while. So don't really know what to make of this because there was no there was no consistent 90-minute performance,
cohesion.
But also like Houston and Louisville combining for 1.5 XG, like kind of doesn't surprise me either.
When you include warm-ups, by the end of this game, they're in like hour 5 of this game, and you just can't assess fitness. There's so little I think you can learn from this game. Avery Patterson scored a banger. Then we had a huge delay. Kayla Fisher scores after that delay. And the game is largely pretty even. And then Emma Sears just brings quality to the end. But again, like this was a game where teams were not generating a ton of attacking quality. Shot quality was bad, generally speaking. It's hard to glean anything from this other than to say, like, this is a result that Louisville got. They have been better than the results that they have been getting. And so this one probably honestly reflects the quality of that team, even if the performance itself doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, good for Louisville to get points. Again, like, I think Houston they are at a talent disadvantage a lot of the time. And while headed in the right direction, they're just they're progressing slowly.
Mid-table on XG allowed, which is a nice sign. Mid-table on XG generated. They are figuring things out, and defensively, I think they probably put in as decent a performance as you could, although is that good defense or is it just two teams with bad offense is another question. But Louisville is second in the league in non-penalty XG differential per game. But what I think what remains a strength of schedule mirage is that they are 12th in the league on receiving G+ per game, which is probably the best predictor we have in terms of possession value components on future attacking success. And when Kayla Fisher's your number 9, that can happen. Although she has had a good couple of games. Thanks.
Yeah, she's putting it together because she's got good talent around her. Yeah, is this Louisville team kind of a mid-table team? Yeah, but we can say that about so many teams in this league. All right, let's move on. We're walking our way toward our game of the week. But as an interesting preamble, there was another match between one of the top teams in the league traveling to the Pacific Northwest to play a team that we are less confident about, and then subsequently lost that game on the road. That is the Kansas City Current losing 0-1 to the Seattle Reign. I think the story of this game is the Seattle Reign just still don't generate any real offense, but boy, if they get an early goal, they can ruin your day.
I think that is absolutely the story of the match. Biondolo scores in minute 35, 36, and then what does Seattle really need to do offensively after that? They're not built for it. They were never intended to be built for it. So just grind the proceedings to a halt, and voila, Bob's your uncle.
Like, are you concerned for Kansas City? This is 2 losses on the trot.
Not really.
Yeah, neither am I.
I think there's one thing that is worth monitoring, and that is how Temwa Chewing is being defended. Because over the last 3 or 4 games, it has been she has really struggled to find good chances to take shots from.
Mm-hmm.
And I think teams are, and that could be a couple of things. It could be that she is losing a half yard of pace because maybe the injury that kept her out of the first half last week, maybe that's more chronic than we've been led to believe. And so that extra half yard of pace means that she doesn't have her quick bursts, her acceleration, deceleration abilities, her cutting abilities, and defenses don't need to sweat her as much. Or it could mean that you just take 2 center backs and you just bottle her up every single game. And everybody is just double teaming her and daring Kansas City's other attackers to try and generate something valuable, which I would have normally said was a losing proposition given the quality of Kansas City's other attackers. But I mean, Vanessa DiBernardo can't be a primary goal scoring option. That's not what she's there to do. And you're also missing Michelle Cooper. So now it's like Bia and Dabinia figure it out, the 2 of you. And that just not only narrows your options of players who can score, but it also narrows your tactical options, you know? That's biting them in the ass a little bit. I just don't know if that's going to be a long-term problem. They're still carrying themselves on the high of those first 3 games to continue looking like the best team in the league.
It's an unfortunate result. Seattle scored on their first shot on target in the game. They only fire off 2 more shots from there on. They do that so that they can have numbers behind the ball at all times.
Yeah. Using McLernon, Barnes, and Bug as a 3-pronged weapon to ensure that Bia in particular does not have any passing options means that Kansas City is, I don't want to say dead in the water, but like their avenues to success are just kind of disappear because Chewinga isn't on the field, Cooper isn't on the field. Who do you have left to create? And you want, when B is there, you want her to be the one pinging shit around and breaking lines. And so if you use 3 center backs to clog all of those channels, then Bia doesn't have anywhere to go with the ball. And what's funny is they still end up winning the XG battle 1.0 to 0.3, you know?
Yeah, which on most days results in you getting a win or a draw.
But they generated 0.08 XG per shot, so it was a volume versus quality thing.
At the end of the day, like, I'm not that concerned for Kansas City. I think the injury situation is bad. That is of concern. But the talent there, they rotated for the Seattle game. Some of that injury, some of that managing minutes. Ultimately, I think they will benefit from those kinds of rotations later in the season. But sometimes you just get snake bitten and lose a road game in Seattle to a team that plays anti-football after scoring.
There's an overarching narrative has emerged from the weekend that like chaos is back, parity is here to stay, the top 4 isn't the top 4. And as we talked about in weeks past, I'm not buying it yet.
Yeah. Again, I say anti-football, but I actually don't think that's like a bad approach for Seattle. Like when they have a lead, right. They are good at this. They are good at denying you good shooting opportunities. They, it speaks to some of the limitations they have, but it also speaks to real self-knowledge. Get your goal and shut up shop. Seattle playing a back 3, you'd be forgiven for thinking of them as a stodgy Italian team.
You combine that with missing your 2 of your best attacking weapons, then this result not necessarily going Kansas City's way like makes a little bit of sense. But is it a trend or is it a one-off? I still lean one-off.
Yeah, I do too. All right, let's get to our big old game of the week. Is this game a one-off? Portland 1, Orlando 0.
Portland is really making a case for themselves. Like they were the better team on the day, generally speaking. Orlando maybe had a little bit more box activity than Portland did, but they didn't do anything more with it than Portland did with their opportunities. So I gotta, the goal was from a bit of good fortune, but like there were plenty of chances that Portland had throughout the rest of the game that indicated they more than deserved it, I think.
Yeah, and that goal is one where I think like XG sometimes underrates the chance itself. Like there was some screening that was happening of Anna Morehouse. Reina Reyes is really central at the top of the box, yada, yada, whatever. I don't need to litigate the quality of individual chances other than to say that like that wasn't a bad shot to take and she hit it really well in stride on her left peg and finished well. That just is going to happen with professionals.
There is the counterpoint though. Yes, there's screening, but that also means Reyes is kind of shooting into traffic. So, and the ball kind of dribbles out to her, there's a loose ball that like kind of falls to her. Like it wasn't the product of like good play in the second phase of a throw in.
I believe Raylan Turner got an assist on that. But yeah, I think that's one of the softer assists ever handed out. No, Reina Reyes gets the ball. She Cruyff turns and sets herself up for a left-footed shot at the top of the box. This is not one of those things that you draw up in the locker room. You don't think of Reina Reyes as your fullback domineering goal scorer. That said, really good chances from Portland throughout. Their bugaboo all year has been conceding early. This time they score early.
I want to go back to the Reyes goal for just a second regarding the assist. This is actually interesting because it speaks to like how you use data, how data gets collected, how data gets interpreted, and also is evidence of like why we disproved that Croy Bethune got 10 assists last year. She didn't, even though everybody's sticking with that story. Raylan Turner is credited with the assist, but then when you look at the event logs, it's Olivia Moultrie who gives the key pass according to them. Then you watch the game, and ASA gives nobody the assist because they say it's a loose ball. And to my eye, when I was watching it, it sure looked like a loose ball that was like coming back out of the box toward Reyes. Now, like we could Zapruder film that section and try and find a more convincing answer, but I think what it also illustrates is that it was a bit of a melee at the top of the box, you know, and there was some good fortune that Reyes ended up.
Yeah, but also in a sequence, and maybe this is where it's more indicative of the performance itself, in a sequence where Reina Reyes was comfortably upfield and Orlando had a bunch of people in the box because they were on the back foot defending. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily a broader set of circumstances we expected to see a lot from this game. So I think that, I continue to think Portland shoot themselves in the foot with their usage of Dana Castellanos. This game was better because she was played out wide for long sections of it and Turner was played in the middle. But beyond that, there are just a fair number of like really net positive players on the field. Sam Coffey was back. She was excellent. Hina is excellent. And Olivia Moultrie is like, as she is played more conventionally in a position she'd like to be in, or is getting herself in parts of the park she'd like to be in more often, is good.
Yeah.
And this defense is better than we thought it was going to be. So while this result, 1-1 would have been probably more fair, Portland did a decent job of containing Barbara Banda and did a decent job of preserving a lead against a team that definitely does have more talent. And Orlando didn't generate a ton of good chances throughout the game to help them get back in. Ali Watt misses a huge chance in the 62nd minute. It's a good save by Mackenzie Arnold, but kind of from there on, Orlando, while chasing the game, doesn't have a great chance to score.
Right. Yeah. They take control of the game, but Portland just doesn't allow them good looks. And that feels maybe more like a one-off than something that Portland's consistently been able to do all season. I mean, they're 10th on XG allowed right now. So the defense is still an area of concern for me, especially because the injuries and choices have like made Isabella Obeys a right back, which I thought was interesting. Yeah. Not where she usually lines up. But then again, maybe that's where she should be playing. Less risk of exposing dangerous areas of the field in the way that she sometimes can when she's playing center back. So.
Playing an asymmetrical back line with Obeys being able to slide into sort of something that looks more like a 3 and letting Reina Reyes run the left flank probably is backing into an effective strategy for Portland. This game easily could have been 2-0 on the Raylan Turner chance that Javoshi clears off the line. But this reflects a game in which, as Orlando pushed further to try to create action, they were mostly being funneled outside the center of the park for attack. And then Portland found themselves able to like spring counters really quickly.
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily what Orlando wants you doing. Most of the vertical passing that Portland made into the box, long balls.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because Orlando was so far upfield because they were chasing the game. And so like once the game state had shifted, I really feel like Portland found themselves in a position that was comfortable for them. And one that they haven't found themselves in a lot this season.
Yeah, Orlando... There was something kind of toothless about Orlando.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Do you feel that? There was yeah, it's a road game, but like you're the better team, and yet Seb Hines kind of set up, at least in possession, like almost like a back five, like with Carson Pickett dropping into the back line and using Carriabello and Oyane as wingbacks who could not get forward very often, and that was strange to me. I don't know. Like, did you feel like that's a byproduct of tactical ideas gone wrong, or do you feel like that was Portland being able to pressure them deeper than they probably were comfortable?
I think the answer is yes. My theory of the case, when I saw that initial lineup with Abello and Pickett stacked on the left side, my thought was, oh, this is great. This allows them to interchange really actively. And
they didn't do that.
Should provide enough defensive. And then it didn't happen. We ended up with a back line that could pass to each other, but really struggled for progression. And Lemos and McCutcheon in the middle of the park ended up feeling a little lightweight, which really hurt. Like, Lemos and McCutcheon are probably less good in the middle of the park. And we can throw Marta in here too, but in that center of the park battle between Lemos, McCutcheon, Coffey, and Hina, like, I actually think that is one place in the park that Portland has like a clear talent advantage. And we're able to clog and exploit. And then Marta Moultrie sort of levels you out, but it meant that going central for Orlando was not a fruitful path forward.
Yeah, for sure.
And then having Obeys pinned back with Pickett and Abello not interchanging ended up being basically a net positive for Portland. So much of what had to work in this game for Orlando once they went down a goal was like Barbara Banda individual moment of brilliance.
Right.
And that is not the best place to find yourself.
It's not like they haven't been there before, but they, in the past, have had better options and have been able to create better pockets of space to get her the ball and let her do what she does, as opposed to today, or as opposed to over the weekend, when it did seem like she was kind of going solo. And then Ali Watt didn't do shit.
She had a really tough game.
She had the one chance in the 62nd minute, which was excellent. But other than that...
But also, she is spending a lot of the game dealing with the Portland asymmetrical backline, which means Reina Reyes is going down the flank. So she is spending a lot of time tracking back when I think that was not the plan. But because the battle had been lost in the center of the park, or because the center of the park was closed down, which is not something Orlando has kind of been used to playing. When we talked to Haley Carter, they emphasize so much being able to, take the ball in the half turn and move forward. And against Coffey and Hina, that just was, that is a really brutal task against those two who are incredibly disciplined. Yeah. And so you ended up seeing Banda sort of, running the length of the field up top, looking for opportunity to sort of create space in behind. And then once it was there wasn't, the numbers weren't streaming forward in a way that allowed future play, or Portland was back enough, and there just weren't like these opportunities carved out.
Yeah, and what that also meant was there were areas of Orlando's attacking flanks in Portland's half where there was just nothing going on. Like they just weren't getting touches. And then in those central areas, as you say, like Portland was able to contest those areas such that Orlando never got any kind of measure of control.
Yeah. I also think that like Alidu was being deployed in this really interesting, they were kind of inverting both of their wings, which made the center of the park yet more clogged. So like Castellanos and theoretically Moultrie / Alidu, who were kind of swapping a fair amount, were also creating a numerical problem in the middle of the park. And Orlando then suddenly didn't have that space to play through again. And, would this game have been really different had Reina Reyes not scored in the 16th minute, yeah, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But chasing the game, you'd always rather be in Portland's position of like just jam it up in there than you would in Orlando's position of like try to break down a clogged center of the park.
Yeah.
And as good as Barbara Banda is, and we could really start having a discussion at this point about referees whistling and some of the best players in the league not getting foul calls that they deserve. But like right now, teams are manhandling Temwa Chewinga and Barbara Banda, and they've been doing it for a while. Banda started flopping.
I was going to say, I think what's interesting about the weekend was that I think Banda's frustration has gotten to the point where she thinks like, what do I have to do to get you to notice what is happening to me? And so, yeah, she started flopping. He's like, please just look at what they're doing.
What is the purpose of officiating other than to create a level playing field for all players on the field to operate and play the game? Right now, Barbara Banda is playing with one arm literally held behind her back by someone else. And officials are sort of, I think, looking at a player like Banda with Banda's strength and assuming that she can get out of these situations or can overcome this kind of situation. And that isn't actually how you should be officiating the game. If a player's being held, I don't care if they're the fastest and strongest player in the league. They're being held.
Yes, dig this, right? This is not a perfect proxy for blown calls. What I'm looking at right now is FB Ref's list of leaderboard of players, like how many fouls a player has actually drawn, like how many times they've been fouled. And it's not perfect because it's not counting like the fouls that weren't called. But it is interesting that among all attacking players, Temwa Chewinga is tied for 39th out of 49 players in the number of times she's been fouled per 90 minutes. Banda is 16th, she's tied for 15th with Rachel Kundananji, who's probably a player we could talk about in this issue as well. Now, that would indicate that Banda and Kundananji are actually getting their fair share of calls. But doesn't that still feel low to you? 1.7 fouls drawn per 90 minutes?
I also don't think that's their fair share of calls considering how much of the offense they are shouldering.
Sure. That would be interesting. What I should do is I should try and do like fouls drawn per touch or touches per foul drawn or something and see what that turns up. That's interesting. Let me file that away for a future date. It's a good idea.
Yeah, because I think that what we're seeing, particularly with Banda and Kundananji, is like they carry a lot of water for their attacks, like a disproportionate amount.
Sure, totally.
And if they are not receiving foul calls, is there something going on here? And in this game, I don't think it's funny that we're talking about it with this game because I actually don't think Portland's defense was as egregious as lots of other defenses.
And again, Banda was flopping. We cannot deny that.
Yeah, but like that feels like the cumulative effect of this season. I also think that Banda is going through a period that has got to be extraordinarily frustrating for her because she just isn't used to not scoring in many games in a row.
She had that cold patch after the Olympics last year, but then the playoffs started and that disappeared instantly. So yeah.
She scored twice against Chicago in the opener and has only scored twice since then.
Yeah.
And that is abnormal for a player of her quality. Even her shooting chances are down this year. She's taking shots.
Well, she's still third on XG per 96 among attackers. So,
but in terms of XG per shot, where is she?
She's basically like slightly above average on XG per shot. But that's this Barbara Banda we're talking about. So being slightly above average is actually a serious decline.
It speaks to A, her level of excellence, but B, she is taking less shots per game, and she is doing so from average positions. Is right now below pace for what she put out last year in terms of non-penalty XG.
So you want to hear something crazy? Barbara Banda has the And so touches per foul drawn is the metric I'm pulling up per Eric's suggestion. And that means the fewer touches per foul drawn you have, it means you're getting fouled more often relative to the number of touches you have. So Banda is third lowest. She has drawn 12 fouls per 183 touches. That means she's actually getting fouled a lot relative to the amount of time she's on the ball.
Interesting.
That doesn't tell us the whole story, again, because we don't know how many calls she should be getting and isn't. So she could very well be getting a lot of fouls called her way relative to the amount of time she's on the ball. That is demonstrably true. But how many times has the ref just not blown her whistle when she's supposed to, when Banda's playing?
Yeah.
So this is an imperfect measurement, but I still think it's kind of interesting that even despite all of the calls she's probably not getting that she should, she's still getting a lot of calls.
It's because every time she touches the ball, she's no less than the third most dangerous player in the league with it. And yeah, this was a game where, because of this early goal, certain elements of the way Portland laid themselves out to play were really well suited to deal with a lot of the ways Orlando planned to attack. And the goal only further emphasized that point. In a game that is 0-0 to the 75th minute, I think it probably doesn't flow the way this game flowed. Again, we're a week removed from them erasing a 2-goal deficit to Angel City. This team is fully capable of turning it on and breaking down another team.
Yeah, but what's interesting, what is interesting too, and speaks to like how Portland's defensive game plan kind of worked, was Orlando didn't chase the game until like the 58th minute. It was late before they really started getting opportunities.
Totally. And there is not, I think you could criticize this. I think you could criticize Orlando's sense of urgency, which against Angel City was also a little subdued until they turned the water up to a boil and forced Angel City into errors and into goals. Portland is probably better.
Do you think that's how they're managing their newfound love of attacking half pressing? Which obviously is a big energy expenditure, and that maybe they don't hit the gas very hard until later in matches. I don't know. I throw that out as a theory. I can't say if it's true or not.
But I don't think this game says to me that Orlando's any different than we thought they were.
Sure. I agree with that.
It just kind of says, it just kind of says to me, Portland, and we've been on this for a couple weeks now, just might be better than we think they are.
At least in attack, yes.
The takeaway here is that Portland, having lost Sophia Wilson, Morgan Weaver, Marie Mueller, all of whom were really, really pivotal in Portland attack last year, they have found a fair number of countermeasures that are doing a decent job of covering for that loss. And they are adapting reasonably well. And maybe some of this we can credit the front office. Maybe some of this we can credit to Rob Gale. He tinkered again this week. It looked pretty good. But I think on an individual level, they're just putting a lot of players, other than Dana Castellanos, in decent positions to help them win. If what we thought the low bar for Portland was probably like that 12th, I think we both had them a little higher than that, but like, let's say that was the fear. I still don't think they're better than the high bar that we gave them.
Sure.
Like, I'm not convinced they're beyond the 5th best team in the league.
While I maintain my skepticism about chaos coming for the top 4 long term, it is obvious that it is going to be tearing points away from teams below the top 4 all season. And so that's as you say, that means Portland could finish 5th, or they could finish 11th, or anything in between. Who knows?
You want to take us out?
Yeah, if you would be so kind, rate us 5 stars and drop a nice review in your podcatcher of choice.
Yeah, we would really appreciate
it. It really helps the show.
We know we're not for everyone, but if we are for you, let us know.
Thank you. And also be sure to follow the show on your podcast of choice. Tell all your friends about us if you haven't done so already. If you feel like we've made an own goal, please email us at expectedowngoals@gmail.com. That's the letter expectedowngoals@gmail.com.
I want to catch one. I called, Ed, this one really bothered me. I called Janice Joseph.
Oh, you did? Oh, I did.
A couple of weeks ago.
That shit.
And it bothered me, and I forgot to own it last week, but I'm owning it this week. It was just like, oh, God. So sorry, Janice. My bad.
I know she appreciates it. If you haven't done so already, join our Patreon. Only $6 a month or $60 a year gets you 4 bonus episodes every single month, including access to our Discord server and our semi-regular YouTube live streams. You can click on that in the show notes. In the meantime, we will talk to you on Patreon on Thursday, and then we will be getting back to you on Meme Feed on Tuesday next week.
Bye.